Welcome back to Weekend Express. We're speaking nutrition with the nutritionist Belinda Otieno in studio this morning. And before we took a break, Belinda, we're speaking about just overall nutrition and how we condition our bodies. And perhaps the most important stage of our bodies as human beings is as soon as we start weaning as infants, you know, moving from breast milk or formula milk to starting now a regular diet. How should new mothers go about this nutrition for infants and toddlers?
Yeah, I'm happy you brought it up because most mothers are green and they don't know what to do.
Right.
And if you look at even the WHO standards, it recommends that children have to be breastfed up to 6 months. So at the 6 months, what is coming for us that is important is the body needs the nourishment. Now, this child, remember when you had the child is born with enough iron stores at that particular moment. So between 4 to 6 months, the iron stores will start to deplete.
Right.
And then look at breast milk, it will be no longer sufficient to meet the demands of the growing child. So we have to introduce what we call complementary feeding. Now, nowadays we don't use the term weaning because weaning is taking off. So what happens is when you use the weaning word, the parents stop breastfeeding and put the children on the food. Then, so what we say is we are complementing the breastfeeding. So we are giving what is the body requires, what the body actually requires more for that child to meet its next demands. So unfortunately, in our world, it is what your sister did, your mother did, your grandmother did, and then if you meet, if say for example you meet a health practitioner, then they'll tell you this is what you need to do. But we're trying to debunk the myths of nutrition, and especially when it comes to the complementary feeding. One, when we start the complementary feeding, it has to be a balanced diet, meaning that food has to be rich in carbohydrates or starch, which is energy-giving food. That food has to be rich in proteins, which is the bodybuilding food. And the proteins we're talking about animal and plant proteins. And the animal products are your egg yolk, your fish, your lean beef, your chicken. All those things that child has to go through, it has to be fed. And then the plant proteins is more on the variety of beans, the lentils, the green grounds have to be there. Then we have your vitamins and minerals, which you'll get from your fruits and vegetables. Now, if you look at currently, and even how the first thing that I was told when I had my baby, I was told when you just had the baby and everyone would come and tell you, this baby is crying because
they're hungry.
They're hungry. So what do? You're told, you blend that porridge, and you know our porridge, for us, you look at Wimby, you're saying, no, I can't give Wimby alone. And then your perception of knowing that we need to mix a lot of things to make it nutritious. So what do you mix? You mix millet, you mix maize flour, you mix rice flour, you mix omena, you mix dengu, you mix beans. Now, the thing is, the moment you've mixed these beans there, look at our process of cooking the beans. The beans have to be soaked overnight, and then you're going to boil it for 2 to 3 hours to get ready. But when you cook it in the porridge, how long do you cook the porridge? For 10 minutes. Did it cook? No. Then when you overmix all these things, what happens? When you overmix these things, say, for example, in your porridge, or when you're doing your foods, when you overmix, then they are creating barriers. It's more like creating a wall, the inhibitors that are created. And each and every food component has an advantage and disadvantage, and especially in the overmixing. Then where is it leading us? It's leading us because, and look at the child system. It is young. The food needs to be introduced gradually. Then here you are, you've introduced a whole concoction. Then the body is not able to excrete it. Your liver is not able to break it down. Your kidneys is not able to remove the renal solute. What checks in? Malnutrition.
Right.
And in this day, it's very sad that even as we're trying to fight hunger and diseases and all that, kwashiorkor is still on the rise. Marasmus is still on the rise. Rickets is still on the rise. And it's not about if you're able to afford the food or not, because in most cases, you find we are able to get the food, but how do we prepare the food? How do we mix the food?
Right.
If you look at now the main meals, what do we do? Green bananas, potatoes, spinach, pumpkin, and carrots. That is our mixture. And then what do you do again? You boil the food. You don't add salt to it. So let's look at it realistically. You only need one food group per each for a meal. So all you needed to do was do the green banana and put maybe fish and your vegetable, your choice of vegetable.
Right.
So when you mix up all these things, first, for example, spinach is high in oxalates. The pumpkin, which is a vegetable and not a starch, as most people know, the pumpkin is high in phytates. The phytates and the oxalates, the moment they come together, they inhibit the absorption of calcium, vitamin D, and phosphorus, which are meant for bone development.
Right. So this is very interesting because sometimes we think we're feeding ourselves or feeding our children healthy foods, but the mixture of too many healthy foods becomes detrimental for them. So how then would you recommend that parents go about this in terms of then mixing this food? You mentioned only having one food group in a meal.
One, I'd encourage most parents, before you do anything, always look for people. You see, that's why nutritionists and dietitians are there.
Right. Usually we go to our grandmothers and,
yeah.
you know.
We have studied the food and we know how food will act on the body and all that. So it's important to get the right information because the education is there. And even when you look at the Road to Health booklet that you're given after you've had the baby, at the back of that book, there's information, accurate information on how you need to feed the baby. And it's a sad part that when you ask someone, have you ever gone through this book? They tell you, no, all they do is look at the graph and close the book until the following month. So the information is there. And then when it comes to now feeding the children, we simply ask, and very simple, from the onset of 6 months, the child has to be fed on a carbohydrate, a protein, and the vegetables. So it's usually the first month, it's trial and error because we are introducing the foods. And when you're introducing the foods, it doesn't mean that this baby has to be given a whole bowl of the foods. So say, for example, my baby is 6 months today. What do I need to introduce? It's the first week, we are introducing the meals twice a day, morning and evening. In between, you continue with your breastfeeding. How much of the food do I want you to give? I need you to give 2 to 3 tablespoons. That is all the baby needs because we're introducing it into the system. We are from a liquid diet to a semi-solid diet. That food has to be blended, sieved, or pureed. Don't give solid food because it can cause choking.
Right.
And then when you're introducing that food, say, for example, I'm doing my proteins. That protein has to be tested 2 to 3 days. You feed it. You feed the infant 2 to 3 days so that you're able to pick the allergies. The beauty of, if, say, the child is allergic to reacting to any of the foods, it means by the end of the day, and that's why we do morning and evening. By the end of the day, probably you'll see how the baby has reacted, and more you'll see it on the skin. You'll see if the baby has rashes or eczema, or the child has boils, or the child is passing blood in its stool and all that. So your work is to use a food diary and say, I fed my child on fish today, this was the reaction, and you repeat it the following day. That fish has to be repeated the following day. And then you're able to tell, this is what my child is allergic or reacting to. And then say, for example, now, if for most parents will tell you, I'm not comfortable about starting with the animal protein, then we tell you the plant protein now has to come in. So, for example, if it is your usual beans, that beans have to be soaked overnight. You will pour out that water and remove the tester. The tester is the skin, ngozi, that one that with the beans.
Right.
Remove that, pour out that water, boil it in fresh water so that it removes the gas, that which will cause the discomfort. And then that food now, say for example, this is my meal for today. It's the potato, it's the fish, it's my terere in there. And then you add 1 teaspoon of cooking oil and a pinch of salt. Why am I insisting on the salt?
So yes, because many, you know, would assume that you would discourage the use of salt.
Now, if you look at salt, our salt is iodized. That is our only source of iodine, universally. So unless you live in Mombasa where you can get the vegetables grown near the sea, then we can say that it has a bit of iodine. But does it have, will you take the right amount? We won't take the right amount. So the other thing is iodine is very important, and especially in growing children, because for that child to develop, that iodine is good for the growth and development of the child, for brain development. It's also, and you see, you don't even use a lot of it. Prevents goiter, prevents hypothyroidism. So all these things, and you see, most mothers will say, I don't want to give salt, I don't want to give sugar, and all those things. Those things, it is part of our food groups, and it has to be given.
All right. I want to focus on sugar because you touched on that, you know, just now. And we've heard that added sugar is a disaster. You know, any artificial sugar is a disaster. And many mothers are very precarious about, you know, adding any sugar to anything, be it porridge, be it whatever, for their children. Is that recommended, and to what extent?
Now, the child is growing. The child, and if you look at your child from the time it was born and up to 6 months, the energy demands have gone up. Such that if you're holding the baby is also trying to jump and all that. So where will you get your energy from? Your source of energy is your carbohydrates, where we also classify the sugar. But it means that sugar has to be taken in moderation. So if I'm cooking my baby's porridge, what do? You only need very little sugar in it. It's to taste. You know that one from far. You don't need to put too much of it. And it's not like you're... And the only thing we discourage is if you used too much, you're going to confuse the taste buds of the child, because now the child will assume even the potatoes has to come with the sugar.
Right.
So you use very little of it. And then as we progress, what's our worst nightmare as parents? And we start introducing fruit juices. Now, look at fruit juice, for example. If you buy your box of their artificial juices, the moment you open that juice, or if you have your soda and you've bought maybe 1 liter for yourself, the 1 liter, what you've said, I want to drink this juice for the rest of the week. So it's like you're programming yourself, it's for 1 week. But the moment that you touch that sugar, you drink it up, you will start having the cravings. And what happens is, you'll be seated somewhere and thinking, there's something I haven't done. What is it? You go back on the soda. You go back on the soda. And then you see now, when we're introducing it to our kids, the children tend to find a quicker way of finding their energy. It's like introducing tea to your child with the sugar, and then they become dependent on the sugar.
All right. This is rather interesting because, of course, we hear that there's some foods that are addictive, and sugar is one of them. But we don't have too much time. I want us to focus now on, you know, a life as it is, very fast-paced in the 21st century. You have many people now opting for dietary supplements, or diet supplements rather, to assist in their nutrition. Is that recommended?
Now, the supplements are there, and supplements we usually recommend the supplements if you are deficient. Say, for example, people who live maybe in the semi-arid areas, it's so hard for them to get the vegetables. So what do? That is a case where we can supplement. But here, say, for example, in Nairobi, why do I need supplements? I can find my food. It's there in the market. I can find the vegetables. But we have become westernized, where you instead of drinking your milk and getting your calcium out of it, you go for the calcium supplements. So we keep taking this omega-3, the calcium. The next thing, you take something else. You know, we are always piling and piling. Please remember, there's an organ in your body called the liver. The liver has to find a way of detoxing and removing anything that is in excess, you know, waste product out of it. So the moment you keep supplementing yourself, you're leading yourself to higher levels of toxicity. Now, today, if say, for example, the basic and the simplest usually is if you're feeding your child on too much carrot juice, that carotene, the orange tinge in it, you'll actually see it on the palm of the child, the nails, you can see it in the eyes and all that, simply because it is more than what is required. So the moment you keep pushing in the supplements and all that, and it's a worry that we haven't put the right standards in the market, where we, even as doctors and health practitioners, we should not be encouraging people to come and ask for supplements. This is what I feel like. I need to supplement myself on this. No, that is not the case. We will only supplement if need be. And the other thing is, for our viewers, do not go for anything, because the market is full of everything. People come up with it's like I'd call it online marketing, and it's more like money-based. So sell these supplements, consume them. This is how it will make you feel. This will help you with your menses. This will help you with 1, 2, 3 things. And of course, because in your mind, you've been perceiving you have a problem. When you take the supplements, you feel better. Then it encourages you to continue with the supplementation. But that supplementation is not worth it, because your food is there and it will give you the right amount of supplementation.
So do it when it's absolutely necessary.
When it is absolutely necessary and it is recommended by a doctor.
All right, I want us to wind up with portion control, because that's another thing, that has been attributed to cases of obesity, malnutrition also in many cases. How do we control our portion sizes, even as we ensure that we have each food group in every meal?
Now, this is interesting, and I think you will look at your plate today. One, there's something that we've all lacked. It's called discipline, and especially when it comes to eating our food. So what do? It's excitement. This is what I need. And if you look back in the 60s, 70s, our plates were smaller. But as time has gone, our plates are larger. They even you are served on a whole platter. So what happens on the platter? You always try to fill it up. Filling it up with what? More of the carbohydrate, more of the protein, and less of the vegetable. The vegetable is usually at the corner there. So what happens is you have lacked discipline because, one, when you're hungry, there's a communication between your brain and your stomach saying, I'm hungry, I need to eat. And that same communication will be taken back. I am full, I need to cut out. So what happens is you look at your plate, you're like, oh my God, I'm full and I still have all this on my plate. So you need to clear it up. So we keep clearing it up. So the moment you clear it up, you've overfed. And you'll always feel it and you'll even exclaim and say, oh dear, I've overfed, I don't think I'll do my dinner. So portion control is very important for us because the body needs a certain amount. If you give the body more than what it requires, the body will simply store the extra as fat. So if you look at, and you'll always know, around your belly, you buy a dress size 10 today, tomorrow you're a size 12. It's because of what you're taking. Then portion control is also very important for us because if, say, for example, if you look at how we are feeding our infants, at that particular point, the stomach of the child is the size of the fist. Then you want to take a whole bowl of uji and pump into the child. So as you pump, and you remember the stomach has the capacity of enlarging. So with time, it enlarges and all that. So you keep on taking more, and obesity checks in. Obesity is not a disease that starts at your adulthood and all that. It's something that over time, you've just been encouraging yourself because you don't look at your portion control.
Right. Right, so, and I understand in the dailies this morning, there's actually a report on how obesity is now the new headache for infants in the country. That's very interesting. But we're out of time. Let me give you your closing comments. Even as the world celebrates World Food Day tomorrow, what is the one a piece of advice on nutrition that you'd want Kenyans to take away from this?
Now, one, if you look at climate change, and global warming, the way it's going, then it means also agriculture has to change for us. And we also have to adapt new ways of making sure that we have sufficient food. So one, would encourage people, instead of having flower beds, let's go back to a place where we used to have our home gardens, where you plant your skuma wiki, you have your tomatoes, and all that, because one, our income is not enough, so we need to find a way of making sure we have the food there. Secondly, we have to look at the locally available foods, the kienyeji. You don't have to wait until in your old age when you're told now you're hypertensive or diabetic, then now you're looking for the kienyeji foods. I mean, your taste buds are gone, so it's not palatable anymore. So whatever you want to start, it has to start now. For you to go into old age and for you to kick off the chronic illnesses, it means you as a mother or you as a parent or a guardian, what you're feeding that child from the first day is important because that's how we are going to kick out obesity and the chronic illnesses. Right. And then as you progress into your young adulthood, let's get out of this thing. And you see, young adulthood is very expensive also. It's binge drinking, it's eating fries every day, and then with the food joints that are opening, I mean, for less than 400, I can get 2 pieces of chicken, I can get fries and a soda and all that. So what I'm trying to say, it's not bad to have them once in a while, but make them smaller.
All right.
If you don't have to go for the 500 ml, take the 250 ml.
Right.
And then as we progress also, let's be wary of what is around us. What is this thing that people are preparing? What is this? Look at, say, people who are doing artificial juices. Look at, are they growing this fruit so that I can term it as natural juice? But can I also get the same juice in my kitchen? What do I need to feed my children? And it's the education. It's more and more. It's not about loving your children by giving them their junk foods and all that. Let's just make them more aware of what they need to eat, how they need to grow and all that. And then we'll also be able to kick out all this. And you see, if you look at most cases, in most cases, the cases that we get in hospitals are low immunity. Low immunity is simply an indication of your food. What are you eating and what aren't you eating? Cases of anemia also, it's all related to what we eat. So it's important for us. Let's read wide. Let's get what is informative, what is justified, scientifically justified. Let's engage the nutritionists more in the country so that we have we are able to kick out the burden of disease. Absolutely, and you're right. We really are what we eat. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Belinda Otieno is a nutritionist talking matters nutrition ahead of the World Food Day tomorrow. Let's now take a look at